Welcome to Takaro, the podcast where we break down the news of today for you. I am your host, Kiran, and I love thinking about and asking many questions about everything. We also have.
Kanya. I am your co host and also your quiz master because I love asking questions. I love discovering all the little details about what's happening in the world, about every little story, and I also like breaking it down into simple terms.
That was a pretty long introduction.
I'm sorry. I will try and keep it succinct next time.
So, what's happening this week, and what are we going to be chatting about?
Yeah, today we are going to talk about multiple things actually because there's been a lot going on. We're going to focus on just three little stories in this week's episode. Now, if you remember, we did an episode on the war in Ukraine a few weeks ago. Well, as wars go, this one is still going on and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon, sadly. Quick quiz for you, Kiran.
Oh my god,
Yes,
at the beginning itself.
right at the beginning. So,
Excellent.
do you know how many days it has been since the Ukraine Russia war began? I'll give you options and I'm going to give you years. Did it start in A 2020, option B 2021, option C 2022 or option D 2023?
I think it was 2022.
You are absolutely correct. It did start in Feb 2022. Can you believe it's been, around 917 days since this war began? That's around 2.5 years.
That's crazy. And I think it's also extremely tough to keep track of the war because so much is changing all the time, right? And if you ask me, are there winners to a war? There are no winners to a war ever because people lose their lives, people lose their homes, people are displaced, people become refugees and they have to escape the country. So it's a terrible thing to go through, and I don't think wars really have any winners.
That's true. And in fact, that's the thing, right? 2.5 years, the people of Ukraine have been struggling. And the latest from there is that this week, Russia unleashed its biggest ever attack on Ukraine, where they sent around 200 missiles and drones into
Wow.
15 of Ukraine's 24 regions. And supposedly these attacks were from several directions at different speeds, different heights. So it was like an all out attack from Russia.
And Russia's reaction was also as a response to what Ukraine did, right? Ukraine, a couple of weeks ago, started getting into the Russian territory. And there were a whole bunch of Ukrainian soldiers, 10 tanks, 20 armored vehicles. They managed to enter Russia and take over about 20 villages in the Kursk region in Russia as well. So it's kind of a back and forth.
And if you remember, if you look back to how it started, it was Russia that was pushing itself into Ukraine's territory by force because Russia believed that Ukraine, some parts of Ukraine should actually be part of Russia. So when Ukraine started pushing back and then actually entered Russian territory instead, the Russian president Putin, he could not stand it one bit. And so, that's the explanation behind why he sent out so many drones and missiles into this all out attack on Ukraine.
And with these kind of escalations over the last couple of weeks, I don't think it looks like it's going to end anytime soon, right? I don't think there's going to be peace anytime soon. And, the conflict in that region is just going to continue. And unfortunately, innocent people are going to suffer. And I think that's the worst part, right? To just reiterate, I think from a war perspective, that is the problem. Innocent people suffering because two countries are fighting against each other. And maybe some of those decisions are just what the politicians have taken, right? It's not even something that the innocent people care about, but they suffer.
And in fact, another region where there's been a lot of suffering that's been going on again for many years, and which kind of escalated or became bigger over the last few months, and that is in a country very close to Ukraine. Actually, do you want to guess what that is?
Oh, Israel? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's Israel. And here's something interesting for you. Did you know that there are two seas that come between Ukraine and Israel? Can you name them?
It's the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea.
Very good. I see you've been brushing up on your geography.
I also had a little help. What all our listeners should also do is go get a map
Yeah,
and see where Israel and Ukraine are, and see these two countries, the two seas, and also some of the neighboring countries, because that's going to be important, right?
absolutely. Yes. I think it's always fascinating to sit with the world map and kind of study where different countries are placed, what the relationships are between different countries, what are the, what is the topography like, where are the seas, where are the mountains. It is fascinating to go through an atlas. So do that, and you'll see actually that, Israel is just to the south of Ukraine. Two wars happening in that zone with two seas, like we mentioned, the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea between them.
Yeah, and then I think Israel's war is all about, or at least the narrative is all about bombing Gaza in search for Hamas terrorists,
Yes.
right? And so, who are these Hamas? I mean, they're being labeled terrorists by the Israelis, but they're a group of people from Palestine who were responsible for the killing and kidnapping of many Israelis in October last year. They did this because they were angry with the way Israel was killing and imprisoning Palestine people and also taking away a lot of the land. But that's fundamentally where all of this started from, right? Is the conflict of whose land it was, who's fighting for their own land, because both of them think they're fighting for their own land.
So, as you're saying, most of these wars are about territory. The attack that happened in October last year, where so many people were killed, Israeli people were killed. Israel got really angry, and in retaliation, or which is another way of saying in revenge, they decided to attack thousands of innocent Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is a piece of land where a lot of people from Palestine had to move.
And in fact, the story of this war didn't actually start in October, right? It goes back many, many years before that. If you go back to actually one of our first episodes, we've discussed and explained the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. So go back on Spotify or on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening to this, and go back to one of the earlier episodes about the Israel-Palestine conflict, because we break down the history over there.
And can you believe, Kiran, the beginning of all this anger and hatred is actually from hundreds of years ago because of something called the Balfour Declaration. It's basically
Mhm.
this British guy who was a foreign secretary at that time called Arthur Balfour, who wrote a letter saying that the British government would give the Jewish people at that time a place to build their home. And this place that they had earmarked for this was inside Palestine. It is a country which was already home to many, many Arab people.
So fundamentally, what happened is when Arthur Balfour wrote this letter and declared
Yeah.
a home for the Jews, nobody asked the Arab people for permission or what they thought about this. And soon, the local people who were there found out that they had to move out, their land was going to be taken away from them, and all of this in order to make place for the Jewish people from different parts of the world who are going to come over there and make it their home. I mean, that's unsettling.
And that conflict from 100 years ago is continuing till today. Thousands and thousands of Palestinian people are now living in refugee camps in constant fear for their lives. Israel has a lot of support from some very powerful countries, for example, the USA. And therefore, they've been able to really hit back at Palestine and push them out.
But things have become so bad that Israel supporters and some of their neighboring countries have asked them to please stop hurting innocent people. The US, Egypt, Qatar, they've all spent months trying to agree to a ceasefire, trying to get Israel and Hamas to agree to a ceasefire, which means stop firing, stop attacking, let there be peace, release all the hostages held on both sides.
Meanwhile, people in Israel are also waiting and hoping that, all the people who were kidnapped over 10 months ago by the Hamas will be released. There are still a lot of hostages that have not been found and released by Hamas. So they are waiting for them to come home as well. So it has to happen from both sides.
It does, and I think it started looking like things were going to get even worse when Lebanon, it's another neighboring country to Israel, they entered the fight as well very recently, right? And Israel launched rockets into Lebanon, saying they were about to launch missiles into Israel. and it was a almost preventive measure, is what they called it, right? Everyone thought this war was going to get even bigger with more countries getting involved.
It was quite scary because we were all wondering, is this going to be the moment when this becomes even bigger? And thankfully, Lebanon and Iran, which is another neighbor who people are worried will get into this war, seem to be holding back for now. Nobody really wants this to become an all-out war involving more countries. They want a ceasefire, they want things to settle down. And now it's time for a quiz question. Since you mentioned Lebanon, what is the capital of Lebanon? I'm going to give you four options. Option A, Damascus.
Hmm.
Option B, Tripoli. Option C, Beirut. And option D, Amman.
I think it's C, Beirut.
Very good. All quizzes answered correctly today, Kiran. Pat yourself on the back.
Oh, thank you. I am. So, all in all, things are not looking good in these war zones, but I think what we can hope for is that more of the neighboring countries, more of the superpowers in the world, like the US and the UK, put pressure to bring about peace in this region. So, let's hope for that.
But we don't want to end this episode on this topic of war. So we are going to shift gears a little bit. For all of you who've been tracking the Olympics with us, remember we told you about the Paralympics? Well, it's begun.
The Paralympic Games, or Paralympics, is the largest event globally for disabled athletes and takes place after every Olympic Games. So it happens every how many years?
4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you know where it's going to take place?
Yes, in the same city as the Olympics, always, which is Paris.
So it's always the host city for the Olympics that also hosts the Paralympics just a few weeks, maybe just a couple of weeks after the Olympics gets over. So be sure to watch and follow along because this time India has sent a record 84 athletes to participate.
Wow. Wow.
Pretty cool.
That's a huge team.
Yeah, and in the last one, we did quite well with the last Olympics that took place in Tokyo. We won 19 medals, out of which 5 were gold, 8 were silver, and 6 were bronze. So it's quite exciting. We're hoping to bring back a lot more this time.
Do you remember how many we won in Tokyo in the Summer Olympics? How many medals in total?
11. Is that correct?
Was it 7 or 11? Why don't you guys tell us if you all remember what the right answer is? Was Dev Kanya right with her answer of 11?
Oh gosh, I really hope I'm right. I have a feeling maybe I'm not, but then correct me. Let us know what the correct answer is. Let's talk about some of our gold medal prospects from this Paralympic.
Yeah, so javelin still seems to be a hot favorite. So we have Sumit Antil, who is a firm favorite for the gold medal. Let's hope Sumit actually gets there. Everyone keep your fingers crossed. And Avni has a shooting title to defend from Tokyo as well. And so does Manish Narwal for, again, shooting, and Krishna Nagar in badminton. So some really, really, really strong contenders for medals this year as well.
But I am most excited about one woman, this lady called Sheetal Devi, who is just such an inspirational athlete. Have you heard about her?
No, tell me more.
Oh gosh, you have to look her up. Now, Sheetal is an Indian para archer. She was basically born with this rare medical condition called phocomelia, which means she was born without arms. She uses her legs and her feet to shoot with the help of this special contraption that's been made that goes over her chest and shoulder.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen pictures of her, yeah, and her training, which is just crazy. Yeah.
And she's super young, and she's the first and only international para archery champion who does not have upper limbs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Her story is one that you have to read up on because
Sheetal Devi,
she's an inspiration, and she could be one of India's big prospects for a gold. Who knows?
fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything is crossed. Come on, Team India. As always, if you have any ideas, questions, or comments about this episode or any of the others, and remember, you have a few tasks to do from this one. Go check out the map, understand the Middle East and, Ukraine and Israel. Also, let us know if Devkanya was right in her answer. And head on over to www.takarokids.com and give us your responses over there.
We would really love to hear from you. So if you have any ideas about what you want us to cover, what you want us to explain or break down, you let us know. And in fact, if you just want a general shout out of your name or want to be part of our show as well, write into us, get in touch, rather tell your parents to get in touch with us. We'll try and make that happen.
Until next time, have a safe and happy week. Bye bye.
Bye.